welcome to Pursuit of Passion. I'm Chef Jamie Bordonaro, here to share with you at home recipes, tips, and techniques to cook memorable meals for you and your loved ones. On today's show, we will be doing a classic Italian Sicilian staple, that's eggplant parmesan. Eggplant parmesan, I think it's the perfect thing to prepare for the beginning, middle of springtime when it's not quite as warm out. So you want something comforting, and yet we're featuring beautiful springtime ingredients like eggplant, tomatoes. It's going to be fantastic, fragrant, delicious. Without further ado, let's cook. So what we're going to start out with in terms of efficiency is, believe it or not, our eggplant. Now you're thinking, wait a minute, if we're going to make a beautiful marinara sauce, shouldn't we do that first? However, this is a little trick that I learned about eggplant. We're going to peel it, slice it into the slices that we need, about a ½ inch thick. And before we begin the breading process and eventually the frying in our extra virgin olive oil, what we're going to do is lightly salt them with kosher salt and press them in between paper towels. What this will do is draw some of that inner moisture to the surface and remove some of the intrinsic bitterness in the eggplant. That will give us a much more delicious, savory eggplant parmesan experience without that added bitterness. So that's where we will begin. First step, I'm going to cut right through the tip of our eggplant and remove the tail end. This will make it a lot easier for peeling the eggplant. The skin, although it will be fried in some olive oil and then baked in the oven, it still tends to turn out to be a bit cumbersome to chew through, and we want it to be nice and tender and delicious and crispy with the breadcrumbs, so we're going to peel our eggplants. Again, just take off the stem part and the bottom. This will give us a nice grip to work with as we're peeling. And as always, I like to peel into a vessel or a container to keep it nice and neat and clean. And we'll have another vessel for our peeled product. So to start it out, since the outside of the skin can be a little bit slippery, you can make a little wiggle motion until you're in and just simply slide right through and then follow the contours of the eggplant to peel it and reveal its beautiful eggplant meat. This dish is also wonderful because it's a vegetarian dish, and yet it feels very rich and savory and delicious, so anybody who is a carnivore will enjoy it as well. Not to mention, using extra virgin olive oil as the frying medium is a wonderful go-to, as it is heart healthy, much healthier than traditional vegetable oil or canola oil. And being Sicilian myself, it's absolutely delicious and top-notch. And if you're hearing me say cook extra virgin olive oil, you probably heard some people who are a bit have some angst against cooking with extra virgin olive oil. However, because we're not cooking it at extreme temperatures, like for instance a saute method, and we're just simply pan frying, we won't break down or deteriorate the beautiful richness and aromatic quality of our olive oil. So I'm not too worried about that. And to prepare yourself before constructing our eggplant parmesan, go ahead and set your oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. That will allow us to finish cooking the eggplant thoroughly in its beautiful tomato sauce that we'll get going. And also help to melt the beautiful mozzarella cheese we're going to put on top. And all those wonderful flavors will get together and create a harmonious, aromatic, nuanced eggplant parmesan. And in the meantime, you can get a medium to large size sauce pot, depending on how much marinara you want to make. And I don't feel that there's ever a chance where you're going to end up with too much marinara because there's so much you can do with it. So get that over medium heat, and you can also get about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of extra virgin olive oil in a frying pan with straight sides. That's called a sauteuse. Or you can use a simple sauce pot as well, as long as it has straight sides. And just get it over low heat for now, since we have still a little bit of time before we get back to our eggplant and start breading and frying. Just going to finish up, tidy up our eggplant, get rid of any remaining skin, and now we have beautiful eggplant that we're ready to start cutting. We could clean up our area, get rid of all the scraps. Now I'm going to actually go ahead and cut these lengthwise. I think the lengthwise strip gives you a good surface area to help dry out the maximum amount of that bitterness once we add some of our seasoning. And I think it's also great for presentation as well. It kind of feels like you're eating a delicious crispy fried steak or chicken parm without the chicken. So I'm just going to trim off the end part here so that we can get beautiful even slices, but feel free to save that, dice it up, put it in a nice ratatouille, for instance, which you can catch the recipe for that on the Nutmeg TV app if you check out the lamb episode. So I'm going to go ahead and cut a nice 1/2 inch thick slice. Again, always pointing the knife tip downward. That will be your anchor to ensure that you have beautiful, consistent, even slices. And keeping your fingers tucked in, knuckle against the blade, safety first. And we'll just repeat this process. Again, we're using our fingers for leverage and balance. And then you can even turn this last piece around and very carefully trim off a little bit to make it even. And then you'll repeat that process with the other eggplant. I'm going to go ahead and get our seasoning process started. Again, this is going to be some kosher salt on the surface of the interior of that eggplant to bring all that bitterness, all that moisture to the surface, and then that will allow us to have this beautiful, pure, natural eggplant flavor that won't be interrupted by any bitterness. We'll let them absorb and sweat out that bitterness for about 1/2 hour before cooking. So again, seasoning from a height. Make sure I have the salt scatter evenly over the eggplant. And this will not make the eggplant salty. It's just going to help to draw out that bitterness, as I said. And we're not going to add too much more salt as we move on with the process. So you'll end up with a beautifully seasoned rather than salty eggplant, and especially not bitter. And that should be enough. And we're just going to layer with paper towels, which will help to absorb that bitter moisture. This one won't fit, so I'll just go ahead and sandwich it in between. And one more layer on top. We'll give them a gentle press to start absorbing that moisture, and we can set them aside for now and get on to our marinara sauce. So of course, for our beautiful marinara sauce, we have our aromatics, onion and garlic, 2 onions, and 7 cloves of garlic. That should be enough for approximately 16 ounces or 3½ cups of tomato. These are beautiful crushed tomatoes. Whatever brand is your favorite will work. And a 1/4 cup of tomato paste, which gives the tomato sauce depth, viscosity, and a little more complexity. And remember, it's those subtleties and nuances that will elevate your cooking to the next level. So, The onions we'll just cut in a simple small dice. It doesn't have to be too small. We want that onion allium note to aromatize our finished sauce. And I do have also fresh basil that I'm just going to tear into the sauce once it begins cooking. That will add another layer of flavor, and it's just so beautiful to pair basil with tomato that naturally that's what we're going to do. So we'll go ahead and begin small dicing our onions while I have the pan that will be over medium heat, medium sauce pot that we have. And again, tuck those fingers in and make uniform slices. We want them to be consistently sized so that they cook at the same time and that we don't end up with any little pieces that are overcooked or not cooked enough. So go ahead, back over, and we get our nice small dice. It's never going to be perfect because ingredients are not perfect, so don't stress over that. But as long as they're relatively the same size, you're in good shape. And if you're wondering the secret to prevent tears while cutting your onions, believe it or not, it's as simple as a sharp knife. If you gently place your finger across the blade like that, not pushing. Of course, if you're too timid to do that, that's fine, don't do it. And you can feel some resistance, some friction, that means the knife is sharp. And a sharp knife is a safe knife, and it will prevent you from having tears from the juices of that onion flying upwards, but it will also prevent slips, which definitely breaks the safety first rule. And let's move on to our garlic. Next up, we'll give our board a quick wipe down. And with the garlic, we're going to go ahead and get a little bit smaller, a little bit finer than the onion because it could become a bit too potent on the palate. But we don't have to mince it super fine since this is a beautiful rustic preparation, and we do want that garlic flavor that is iconic with this classic dish. And even though it's a member of the allium family, I'll certainly never shed a tear for garlic. It's always welcomed in my dishes. So I like to start out the chop on the garlic by just slicing in even pieces, again keeping the fingers tucked in. And then I'm just going to run my knife right through. And that starts out the first process of the rough chop. We can line them up again, go in the opposite direction, and then simply place your left hand, or if you're right-handed, your right hand, on the tip end of the knife and just simply run it right through, collecting the pile together. And before you know it, you will have some nicely chopped garlic that we can then begin sweating in our extra virgin olive oil. And again, since we're not sautéing, we're really sweating the aromatics, which means a little bit lower temperature so that the flavors melt into the sauce. It is totally fine to be using extra virgin olive oil in this case. It's just going to add an extra little nuance, subtlety, develop that flavor, which will create a beautifully finessed, finished dish. All right, so our aromatics are chopped. Now it's time to get some extra virgin olive oil in the pan and begin sweating our aromatics to start cooking the sauce. I'm going to go ahead in with about 3 tablespoons worth of extra virgin olive oil, and we can tell it's nice and hot. Add in our onion and garlic. And right away we're going to add in a pinch of salt to help draw out that moisture, which also seasons the sauce while it's cooking. In addition to that, though, it does draw out that moisture, which will prevent burning and take away that raw oniony flavor, oniony and garlicky flavor. So sweat those down for about 5 to 7 minutes, depending on the heat source that you're using. And we can go ahead and add in our tomato paste. Again, tomato paste is going to add that richness, that savoriness, the viscosity to the sauce, a lot of complexity. But the key is to cook it thoroughly. You want to cook it for at least 10 minutes until you smell it and that raw tomato flavor has dissipated and evolved and transformed into something so wonderfully savory that it's going to add a lovely layer to our sauce. Once that's gone for 10 minutes, go ahead and add in our crushed tomatoes. And again, there is that slight bit of rawness and raw flavor to our canned tomatoes, our crushed canned tomatoes. So we're going to continue cooking that for another, I'd say, 15 to 20 minutes, depending on the tomatoes you have. And I'm going to add a little layer of seasoning in the form of salt and freshly cracked black pepper. We'll get our sauce setup out of the way. And we'll have our oil start to reach the heat that we want. We don't want it to be smoking, but we do want it to be hot enough to fry our beautiful eggplant. Now the setup for our eggplant, once all of that bitterness has been removed through the salting process, we have all-purpose flour seasoned with salt as well as some Italian seasoning. I cracked 5 whole eggs. We have 5 whole eggs that I whisked together with some kosher salt as well as Italian seasoning, and panko breadcrumbs, which offer a nice light crispness when fried, seasoned again with kosher salt and Italian seasoning to really layer on those flavors, carry on those flavors. And here we have our eggplant. You can see all the moisture that has come out of them. And we're going to start the breading process. So you want to try and keep one hand for the wet, one hand for the dry. That will allow you to very easily work with the breading process without creating a dough on your hand. So that's what we're going to do. This is the dry hand for the flour and the breadcrumbs. This will be the hand that takes the eggplant out of the eggs. So you just want to cover the whole surface of the eggplant as well as the sides. That's a part that could be often missed. Go ahead and just squeeze gently to coat those sides and the top and bottom. Shake it off, turn it around, make sure we have even coating. And that's what's going to allow the egg to stick to the flour once it's thoroughly coated. Once you're in the egg, again, same process. Just make sure that all the egg mixture is surrounding your eggplant. All the raw flour is covered up with egg, and then it'll help in the next process, allowing the panko breadcrumb mixture to stick to our eggplant. Just go ahead and plop that right in and start to scatter some of our panko, our seasoned panko on, and we just press it down to start. You see, I put a little bit on the surface so that when you pressed it down, you weren't just pressing the the raw egg mixture, which would create a messy situation in your breadcrumbs. Shake off some of the excess, see where we're at, see what kind of coating we have. It looks like we need some more coating on this part of the eggplant. So go ahead, sprinkle it on and press once again. And that should get both sides nicely coated, nice and evenly. Place that on a paper towel, ready to fry. And we'll repeat that process with the remaining eggplant and get those fried nice and delicious pretty soon. We'll make sure our oil is at a nice temperature so that once we fry, we're not too dark on the color. But if it's too low of a temperature, it'll just absorb some of that oil and become greasy, which we don't want. So for purposes of our demonstration, we can head right into the frying process. Get rid of our breading. And we have a transfer tray lined with paper towels for the fried eggplant. So we'll make sure our oil is nice and hot. Give our hands a quick wipe down. And I can see it's starting to smoke, so I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. And we'll go ahead in very gently, placing the eggplant slice away from you. And we can see some sizzling, which is a good sign. Now, once you put something in the oil, the temperature will immediately go down. So you can actually So once you place something into the oil, the temperature of that oil goes down, so you can go ahead and simply adjust by increasing the temperature. And then we have our finished marinara sauce, which is nicely aromatic and delicious. Once our eggplants are nicely fried, we'll begin the process of layering the eggplant parmesan. So we'll start in our shallow baking dish, making sure our eggplants are roasting nice and evenly, frying nice and evenly. We can give a peek to the opposite side, starting to get some brown, which is a good sign. And you can see the oil is only about halfway up, not too much. We're not deep frying. So we're going to start while our eggplant is frying. Layer our casserole or baking dish with our sauce. Just enough to cover the bottom. That will prevent the eggplant from burning. And of course, flavor our delicious eggplant parmesan. And we'll give it a flip once we get golden brown. In the meantime, the other ingredients for finishing our eggplant parmesan, we have, of course, Parmigiano Reggiano. I like to use it fresh and grate it. And mozzarella cheese that will go over the top. And it looks like we're starting to get some really nice color. I'm going to go ahead and flip the eggplant. Now, of course, you're going to want to continue to get nice, beautiful golden brown color on the other side. And once you have that, you can turn the heat of the oil off, season your eggplant with kosher salt, and we can layer in our eggplant. I like to use the smaller of the two portions on the bottom. That way the larger one is really showcased on the top. Our next step, after the eggplant is on top of the sauce, more sauce over the top, of course. Freshly grated Parmigiano Reggiano. Feel free to be as liberal as you prefer. A few slices of mozzarella cheese. And we're going on with our next piece of eggplant. And repeat that same process to build your beautiful, perfect eggplant parmesan. On with that parmesan and our mozzarella to top. Then we just throw that in the oven for about 10 minutes to bake. Clear our station as we get ready to plate. That beautiful mozzarella cheese will melt so nicely, creating a delicious dish. We'll get our plate ready. Clear out what we don't need. And there you have it. We'll take a nice, beautiful slice of our eggplant parmesan with those beautiful layers, that sauce that we worked hard to create, all the subtleties and nuances from our aromatics. You can add a little bit more sauce if you prefer. And to garnish, some of that fresh basil that'll add some green vibrancy for our spring dish, but of course also carry on that beautiful basil flavor. And why not gild the lily with a touch more extra virgin olive oil. Right over the top. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, a beautiful, classic, traditional eggplant parmesan. Really, really wonderful for this time of year. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope I've inspired you to try your hand at a classic Italian staple to cook memorable meals for you and your loved ones. Thank you so much to Nutmeg TV for this opportunity. Check out all the episodes of Pursuit of Passion on the Nutmeg TV app, and you can go ahead and check out the full recipe for this, as well as many other of Pursuit of Passion dishes on www.pursuitofpassion.net. Thank you so much for joining, and please be well on your Pursuit of Passion.